Hello and welcome back to Getting to the Top, where we interview transformational leaders about their leadership journey in hopes that they can inspire you on your leadership journey and you are willing to take up the mantle. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, I have with me Camille Selvon. She's an award-winning digital media expert and head of the animation department at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. She was instrumental in the development of CXC CAPE Curriculum in animation. And as the founding director of Animae Caribe Festival, the Caribbean's premier festival for over 20 years, she has contributed immensely to the development of animation and new media sector in the region. Her leadership in the industry in the region is recognized globally, and I can attest to that because I remember when I was heading up Invest TT, we spoke highly about the impact that she's had on this industry, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but certainly globally, and how they look at us and our capacity for the development of animation. So having spoken at many international platforms, and most notably the recent IDB annual general meeting, where she spoke on the development of the sector in the Caribbean as a project lead for the IDB-funded TTAP Factory, Trinidad and Tobago Animation Production. She manages the studio for the creation of digital content and global outsourced opportunities for graduates of the UTT Animation program and small and micro studies. And we'll put in the bio the many awards that she's won. And over the years, she's built up a critical mass of international regional network professionals in the industry, ranging from Disney, Pixar, EA Games, Toon Boom, and Cartoon Network. Welcome, Camille.
Oh, thank you so much, Racquel. I'm so excited to be here. And it's an honor just sitting here speaking to you and speaking to your audience.
I really appreciate that. So let's jump right in. So how did you get into animation? Like where did this passion for animation start?
You know what? It actually was not my main focus as a career. I studied at Goldsmiths University. I did media and communications, a degree in media and communications. And the idea was that I wanted to do film. I wanted to do music videos. At that time, MTV just came out. So I'm telling my age, and MTV had just come out. And I just wanted to do music videos. But with the degree that we did, we had a teaser in video, film, animation, journalism, radio. And the moment I did animation, I was like, oh, I think I'm going to shift, right? So that's where it actually started, when I actually entered the university.
Okay. And so what was it about animation that you thought, you know what, this is the thing that I must do. I'm not going to do music videos or feature films. I'm going to do animation. So this is taking it away from live and turning it into something that's less so.
Right. I think it's because at heart, I'm an artist. So I've been able to be successful in business and also be an artist. And that is kind of rare, Racquel. I don't know if you know that, but that's kind of rare, right?
It's incredibly rare.
Yeah, it's not because artists can't do it. It's just that, you know, we have to kind of find a balance to stick with it for the corporate world and still do our art. So I'm an artist at heart first. That's what at secondary school, at St. Joseph Convent, I did art and I excelled in art. And when I did the program and the teaser at Goldsmiths University, I felt like my art was moving. It's like, okay, that's taken my art to the next level. You know, I'm doing art, but it's moving. So that kind of triggered it. But as I got more into it and I really studied the business of it, because the degree was not just animation, it was a degree in media and communications and how communication worked. And we did important subject matters like cultural studies. So I was seeing, like, you know, the fact that we're not seeing ourselves in the animation, you know, spaces. You're not seeing Caribbean people, you're not hearing Caribbean voices. And so doing things like cultural studies was kind of very, very important for sort of setting up my understanding of what it is I wanted to do with animation, not just create cartoons.
So at what point did you develop your love for art? Because I actually, you know, my first thought of, well, my first job, I thought I was going to be an astronomer. But then once I was always passionate about art. And really, when I was leaving high school, I still thought I was going to be an artist.
Yeah.
I just didn't realize that I also wanted to eat food and live in a house and
That is the
maybe art
challenge.
might not afford that.
Right. That is the challenge. But I am really glad and I have the opportunity now to show that it can. It can
Yes.
happen. My story tells that. But I think for me, your question was at what point did
At what
I
point, yeah, like were you, when did you fall in love with art? Was it, you're in elementary school, you're a 4-year-old, you're drawing on
primary
everything.
primary school? So my father was an artist.
Oh,
My
nice.
mother was somewhat of an artist. She didn't practice it too much. So from school, primary school, I loved art. And one of the things that my father, being a teacher, he would come home with chalk in his pockets, right? White pieces of chalk in his pockets. And that's how I first started kind of drawing all over the place. I draw on the back of tape, in the back of cupboards, on the wall, you name it. But from then, that love of art was there. But my parents encouraged it. That's the difference. My parents encouraged it. Yeah.
So your father was an art teacher.
He was a teacher, a primary school teacher. So he taught all the subjects. Primary school, they get to teach
you teach
all
everything. Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
And so and was an artist as well and encouraged you in the development of this art skill, and your mom as well. So how did your mom sort of practice her art?
So she did art, but she never really got into it. And she was a mother of 6.
Oh dear.
Right? Started very, very young. And then had to go on to work because at that time, I mean, I saw her payslip. She showed me a copy of her payslip from the 1960s. And I'm like, how in the world did you survive with 6 children with that payslip, But she had to work. She never got the opportunity to push her art out there. But definitely, I remember seeing drawings from her. She would, when she's making our clothes, she would draw it out first. So I knew from there that she had a creative skill, but it was never pushed. And because of having those 6 children back then, she just never, got into it.
All right. So you decided, leaving university, that it's animation. So then how do you turn this passion for animation? What's the next step?
So I spent about 3 years in London before I got back to Trinidad, and I tried to get into the industry. So I worked with a friend of mine. She was a Oscar nominated animator. I worked with another animator supporting him, and found that I felt like I needed to go home. I know that sounds really stupid, but I'm like, I'm ready to go home. I can't do this here. I felt like a tiny little dot in this big ocean. So I took what I learned in the 2 years that I stayed back, and I came back to Trinidad to try to open a studio here, right? In my naive mind, I was like, I'll go to the bank and ask for a loan to open an animation studio, right? Yeah. And I remember going to the bank and the bank manager looking at me and going, okay. So they said, so what exactly are you going to put on the shelf? And that was the moment I knew this is not going to be easy. Yeah. Because animation and art and creativity and the creative sector and the creative economy on a whole is not something tangible. Right. It is not something you can put on the shelf. And the fact that the bank manager didn't understand what that is, I knew I had work to do. So my first step was to sensitize people, Racquel. So that is where the idea of the festival came up. I felt, you know what? Is either I sensitize people or I go back to London. And I could go back to London and get a job. And I felt, you know what, let me do a festival. So in 2001, 22 years ago, I decided, without any experience of doing a festival, I'm going to do a festival, simply because I felt people didn't understand what this is, right? So I did that. It took about 6 or 7 years before we got the attention of like the university and the investors. And after 6 years of real struggle, we actually started getting funding properly. So we got funding from Film TT, from Ministry of Culture, and we then created the festival properly. What happened after that was we were seeing a lot of young people, myself and my business partner, Roxanne Coltrust, we were seeing that a lot of young people were coming to us in the festival going, oh, this is what I did. This is what I did. could you tell us where we could learn this? And in my experience, there was no place in Trinidad and Tobago that was teaching animation or anything to do with animation. And that is where the education side of it occurred, where I approached UE to see if we could put a program there. That didn't work out. And then I was actually called into a meeting by my wonderful mentor, Professor Ken Julian, where he, having the mindset that he has, saw that animation and digital media was something that was blowing up in the world. And he called me into a meeting, and we had a meeting, and in 6 months' time, we then had a digital media animation diploma. And then in 2018, we actually launched the BFA in Digital Media Arts with specialization in animation, gaming, and music technology.
Fantastic. So tell us about the festival. So what is Animae Caribe?
So Animae Caribe is an annual festival. We've managed to do it annually for 22 years. Even during COVID, we did it.
Wow.
But we went online, 100% online then. But basically, it's a festival that is celebrated in the Caribbean to celebrate Caribbean stories and Caribbean content, and also content from the diaspora. So when you talk about the diaspora, you're talking about everywhere. You're talking about Africa, you're talking about India, you're talking about China. However, the way how we package it is that it's an experience. You can come to the Caribbean, experience animation, but you also get to see the culture and feel the islands, and so it's been very, very successful. It's been recognized by CARICOM. It's been recognized by UNESCO. It is very, very much established as an international festival. We've been featured in some international magazine as one of the top animation festivals in the world. I mean, not the top, but we were mentioned. And it really is a platform for the young people that are doing the animations locally to have a platform to showcase their animations, to pitch for funding, and to just meet professionals from the field. So we've had people from Disney, from Pixar, from EA Games, from Cartoon Network. That's where I've built up my cadre of professionals. Now, one of the things I'll say, Racquel, it was easy for me to sell Animae Caribe to all of these professionals. I don't often even have to pay for these guys to come. I don't have to pay them. I have to pay their flight accommodation. But the moment I say, listen, there's an animation festival in the Caribbean, you could get to go to Tobago as one of the days. They're like, sign me up.
Sign me up. Yeah.
Sign me up. I'm ready to go, So it's worked out really, really well.
So I think for you, it sounds as though you were very, very early in your career, willing to create your own opportunities, actively working to identify mentors, and really refusing to give up.
Yes.
Would you say that those were sort of the hallmarks of your success, or are there more things, what built this sort of grit and determination in you that, listen, year after year, I go to the bank and the bank is like, what are you going to have on the shelf? And you're like, I have work cut out for me and I'm ready to do this work and I've signed up and I just keep going.
Yeah. So what you pointed out was really instrumental. So like having mentors, I would say to anybody, you have mentors, ask them to be your mentor, right? Because Professor Julian probably doesn't, we don't have that thing where I see in public, like, that he's a mentor, but I know he's a mentor because he's made a space for me at the table. And we need to acknowledge that animation, digital media is a male-dominated industry without a doubt. But at the time he made that. So I have other mentors like Joan Vogelsang, the CEO of Toon Boom Animation. She is now a consultant on one of the projects I'm doing here in Trinidad at TTAP Factory. So mentorship is really, really important. What I think though, Racquel, what made me kind of really put my foot down and say, this is what I want to do. I had several experiences, especially with my children. I have 4 kids. A lot of people ask me, when did that happen? But yes, I have 4 kids.
I only know about 2.
4. So I have 4. And one day, at that time I was living in London, my daughter came to me, who is now the current Miss World.
Yes.
Right, as you would know. She came to me, it was Christmas time, and her grandmother gave her a doll, and that doll was Hannah Montana, absolutely blonde, blue-eyed doll. Now, that is not a problem, but my daughter at that time had issues with herself. She talks about it now. She had issues with her hair, her whole, the fact that her hair is how it was. She's living in London, so obviously, she's in a school where she is an ethnic minority. That's what they call it in the UK, right? So she had issues with her hair. And I felt that this doll that she's now going to look up to is just not right for her right now. Maybe when she gets a little more self-esteem. And it's things like that that kind of really push me to think that we need to create content that is reflecting us, our experience as a Caribbean, and creating it so that we can give it out to the world. So those are other things that kind of inspired me. The other thing that inspired me is the fact that I work with students. Now, I have a lot of teachers in my family. So as you know, my father was a teacher. My mother was a school librarian, so she was like a teacher. My brother was a teacher. My sister was a teacher. And my other sister was a teacher. And I was like, I'm never, ever, ever going to be a teacher. I am not going to be a teacher. And what am I now?
Of course. Of course. Listen, the universe has a sense of humor, and it will challenge you on what you think you're going to be versus, but you've done so much more in terms of creating these spaces and inspiring all of these young people. So I want to go back to how you identify mentors, especially since you said Professor Ken Julian didn't sort of hold himself out there to be a mentor. You saw in him what was that potential to be your mentor. So what was your approach like to him? Like, how do you approach a mentor? How do you recommend that?
Right. So like I am mentors to people now in that same way where I mentor without saying that I'm a mentor to you. So for him, it was more him doing that, right? And giving me the opportunities to do things, putting me in positions to do that. So that was that approach. Like for instance, Joan Vogelsang, this is a different approach I took. I actually said to her many years ago, I said to her, you're my mentor and I want that to continue. I look up to you. I follow your career. You also advise me. So I would like that to continue. So I verbally said it to her. And it was either a case of, well, Camille, I don't have time to do that, or not a problem. Right. And it was never a problem for Joan. So I think there's two ways to do it, where you kind of know that this person is acting as a mentor because of how they act with you, and then you actually ask the person to be a mentor.
I get a lot of requests for people saying, okay, can you be my mentor? And I'll actually point out, I get a lot more requests from men than women, and that disappoints me because I feel like my entire platform is on diversity. So why aren't more women asking, and why are so many men asking? But that aside, I find that I respond better to someone making a request for me to be a mentor when they have a specific ask in mind versus mentor me. It just feels so empty and aimless and vacant versus here's the challenge that I'm having. I am trying to get a new job and I cannot seem to figure out what my niche is, or I'm trying to change careers and I don't know what are the steps to take in terms of changing my industry. A lot of people are trying to get into sustainability. A lot of people are bridging gaps from one industry to another. And rather than sort of coming, mentor me, I'd really prefer to get a more specific request. And then that starts a relationship. Then, it can go wherever it goes.
Yeah. And that is important because mentorship, the person who is asking to be mentored need to be mindful that most of the time you're asking someone who is extremely busy.
Exactly.
Right?
You don't want to, I had a girlfriend, I have to give you this joke. A girlfriend of mine was saying, oh, I need to come to you for advice, but I never come because you're always so busy. And I said, would you want to come to me if I wasn't busy? If I'm just sitting at home, filing my nails, do you care about my opinion at that point? And she's like, you have a good point. She's like, oh, well, all of the people who I want to reach out to are busy. I'm like, all of the people that you're going to want to reach out to are already in demand. That is the very nature of supply and demand. So the people that you're going to want to help you are going to be people who don't have a lot of time.
Of course. And a simple, right now I mentor someone where she would she actually asked me to be a mentor, right? So that was one that she asked me. And it's ever so often, she'll drop me a WhatsApp. Can you talk? If my time is really bad, I will say, okay, 7 o'clock in the morning, sometimes we meet and we talk. And that is okay for me. But, you know, we have to be mindful on both sides that time is like something that, especially, you know, women doing a lot of things, you have to be mindful of that.
Of course. I mean, time is the one thing we can't make more of. So, you know, but I think thinking about mentorship creatively is really good as well, and very strategic. So for example, I'm a runner. If you come to me and say, hey, you want to go for a run around the savannah while I pick your brain? Oh my gosh, you have me any day of the week. I love to go for a run. So, you know, figure out what, I think if you're looking to engage a mentor and somebody's really busy and may not have a lot of time, figure out what they're interested in. And so that way you are supporting them while asking for something for yourself. And I think that's something I've read about, where, you know, you dig your well before you need water. Figure out what it is that the person that you need something from needs, and be willing to help them while they help you.
Exactly. And the information you're giving your audience now and people who will be listening is so important, because then they know that people like yourself and me and others, we do want to mentor. I know a very few women that are doing things and making a difference who would say, no, I don't want to mentor anybody. We do want to mentor, but it's finding a balance so that, you know, it's done in a creative way, as you said, but in a mindful way.
Of course. And you have to, you know, we only have so much bandwidth. So it's really important that, and you're right. I can't think of another woman who isn't willing to impart some wisdom and share her journey or share her story or help somebody else, because you understand inherently how difficult it is. This is a difficult road to leadership, but also none of us would have made it without some support from somebody else. And so recognizing that you were supported on this journey, you're willing to help bring anybody else up, but it's within boundaries, right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
So something you said resonated with me, and I remember, and I hope, this is going to be a spoiler alert, I hope I don't ruin any films for anybody, but when I started getting into this whole issue of gender diversity and diversity in leadership and women at the table, I started looking at everything. It was like I was wearing blinders and everything came off. And I would look at films, and then you see the credits and you're seeing the names, and it's just men. And it's just men. And I started to, there were times where I'd say, how many seconds will names scroll past before I see the first woman's name?
This industry, I'm telling you, I mean, I share this on the platform for the Ministry of Trade. So this industry, when I first graduated, I won a Royal Television Society award in London. Me, Trini Woman, RTS award. And with that, it allowed me to go to conferences, and, you know, they invited me here and there. And often I was the only female in the room. And very, very often I was the only Black person, the only person of color in the room. And for certain 100% of the time, I was the only person with a Trini accent in the room, right? And it has changed quite a bit, I would say, the last 5 years, because of persistence of persons who understand gender equity, including men, men also encourage it,
Of course.
And so you're seeing a difference. And by doing things like, for instance, what I did, I personally, that was a personal mandate of mine, that I'm going to encourage more women. So I worked with Microsoft girls in ICT for years. Every time that came around, I did sessions in schools, I did sessions for Jamaica, for all over the Caribbean. And I put myself out there. And Racquel, I could tell you that I have seen the difference.
Nice.
So like when we first started the UTT program, when this was 2008 was the first one, we had about 15% female intake, 85% male intake. By 2018, we had 45% female, 55% male. That is a direct impact of myself and others going out there, the young girls seeing me, an image of themselves, talking about animation and talking about film. So it can be fixed, but we have some work to do.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And you know, the story that you told about your daughter and that doll and wanting to create content that is more representative is so important. I mean, and I think we don't even realize it, but in my old age, I went and had another daughter, and so she's 4 now. And in reading stories to her, these stories just create a perception of self that it is not about you, or it's not you can't lead, or you can't, you know, most of the stories it's the boys do this, or most of the stories it's the Europeans have done that. And you start reading the stories through a very different lens. And how does she develop this sense of self and this sense of pride of feeling that I am enough, and I'm beautiful, and I am, you know, I'm capable, when all of the stories that we're told just seem to take us in a different direction? And how important it is that not only are we creating content that creates representation, but that we have different people at the table creating that content, because you're going to get the various perspectives, and you're going to get the different stories, and you're going to get that enrichment that says that we all belong. And it's not just one look or one person or one gender or one anything. It's made up of all of us.
Exactly. And that is why we, being in the position we are now, have to bring those people to the table. Because, you know, one of the things that I remember saying to someone, a female friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine, about being my experience in the boardroom, right? My experience in the boardroom is that often I'm the only female, right? I'm the only female in there. And I have to deal with the that feeling of not being good enough in spaces like that, because I feel that as women we act in a different way. It's not equal or less than, it's just that we deal with things differently, right? So one of the things about bringing people to the table is that we ourselves, being in the position, have to create those gaps, create those spaces, and pull those people in, because the others that are at the table are going to stay at the table. There's nothing, we can't do anything about that, right? But we ourselves have to make the space and pull those in. And that's kind of what I'm doing with my students.
So how are you creating more spaces? So you're visible, which is great, because that is inspiring others. You are letting others know, listen, I'm willing to support you on this journey. If you need advice, if you need a mentor, you are making yourself available to help support people on that journey. And when you're in those rooms and the only one, you are advocating for others and being willing to sort of pull others along. What are things that you think that others can do to help to support? You know, yes, we can be visible. Yes, we can, you know, volunteer ourselves as mentors. Yes, we can, when we are in rooms of power, can advocate and pull others in. What else should we be doing?
Okay, so Racquel, that one, I had to take a deep breath to answer this.
I like it.
Because being in the boardroom is not easy. It's not easy. It is so not, I don't know if you have that experience, right?
Listen to me. I have just come out of a board meeting, and I literally had a debrief with my team. And I said, listen, I don't know if I'm going to stop crying today, but it is tough. And I think we need to be honest. It is also tougher for women, because we face more challenges, not that we are less competent, but we are definitely challenged more on providing the same set of facts. And I'm not saying that about my board. God forbid, they are wonderful and I am grateful for their support. But in general, the data shows it. I'm not making up a story. I'm not telling you an anecdote. The reality is that a woman on a board, whether she's the chair or the CEO or just a director on the board, you will face microaggressions, you will face greater challenges. And I am typically not one to buy into women give women trouble, because I phenomenally disagree, and I wouldn't be where I am without the support of other women. But I will say that bias isn't limited to men. Bias is a universal thing that we all have because of the construct of society and what we've been taught as the truth about who belongs where.
Exactly. So I want to share an experience, right, in the boardroom where my mentor, I had to go to her, right? I had to go to her. And the experience I was having was so impacted me that I broke out in hives. It was the first time that I broke out in hives. And I had to go look up hives because out of nowhere this hives happened. And it basically said it's related to stress. It's stress related. And I had to go to my mentor. And she said something really important to me that I had to sit back with. She said, Camille, when you're in the boardroom, especially when you're dealing with men, and I love my men because a lot of my supporters are men, right? So it's not to do with anything like that. Being emotional comes off as a weakness. That's what she said, right? She said, being emotional comes off as you're weak. So you have to put your armor on before you go in there, right? So I didn't like that. So it was one time when I didn't agree with her, but I didn't say it then. And I had to sit back and really think about that. And there is some truth to it, Racquel. I do feel that comes over as a weakness, but there's a difference. This is how I balance it off, because it didn't sit well with me with what she said. There's a difference between being emotional and being passionate. And I think often it is read as if it is being emotional when it is being passionate. And as I say to everyone, I will not be where I am today if I was not passionate. Absolutely. Right?
That's blood, sweat, and tears.
So what you're reading from me as emotional is not emotional because I'm a strong person. It is the passion that is being misread.
But the reality is there's nothing wrong with emotion. And the thing is, two people, a man and a woman, could potentially display the same set of behaviors, and one be branded passion and the other be branded emotion. And you see it all the time in tennis as an example. You know, another game that I like to play. So if somebody wants me to mentor them, an easy way to get at least an hour of my time is to want to play me some tennis. But the reality is that we have to get more people at the table, because it's only then that you start realizing, well, wait a minute, when he sort of raises his voice and gets animated, no pun intended, that it's branded as passion. But when she raises her voice and gets animated, it's branded as emotional. And emotional somehow is branded as bad. And I think when we talk about gender diversity and how important it is so exquisite for us to understand that we are harming our boys as much as we are harming our girls with this narrative of this is how girls are and this is how boys are, and boys don't show emotions and girls are the ones who cry. Because that's nonsense and it's ridiculous, and we really need to just dismantle it.
Absolutely. And create that, bring people to the table, because I was saying about a friend telling me, well, why don't you create your own table? That is counterproductive. We've done a lot of work. There is no need to recreate the wheel. So why should we create a new table?
Oh my goodness, Camille, listen to me. I couldn't love you more for that statement, because there's so many, and I love female entrepreneurs, and I think female entrepreneurs are magnificent. But what we are finding is that because there's so many spaces that women are being, corporate spaces that women are being closed out of, for whatever reason, that women are flooding to entrepreneurship. And the challenge with that is that the businesses that these women start will take time to grow. And we need a critical mass of women starting businesses and becoming entrepreneurs and building the next set of unicorns and mega businesses. Absolutely. But we also need to have a critical mass of women leading established businesses as well and sitting at the table that already exists. We don't have 1,000 years to create the new table and to start over the whole new society. We need to allow the talent that we have in the rooms that are making the decisions so that we have greater results and equity for all of us.
Yeah. And the lesson I will say to that, because you asked about what advice would you say about being in those spaces. One is understanding that your passion is what is being perceived as emotion. So it's okay. Go ahead, be passionate. And the other is to tell others. So like my experience in the boardroom, I share with my mentor, my mentees, right? Like, okay, if this is happening, what I need you to do is this, right? My mentor tells me, go and put, when you sit in the room, put that protection around you so that your mental health is protected. I say to my girls, my women, my mentees, I say, right, if you feel a sense of you're feeling a little bit nervous, put your crown on. That's my thing. Put your crown on before you go into that room. Like literally take it and put it on. And when you put it on and you walk into that room, you're feeling like you have a crown. Nobody is seeing that crown, right? And little things like that, because the energy that is that old school male energy is going to stay there. One of the things I have to say is that I'm seeing a number of young men coming up working differently.
Yes.
I'm so happy to see it. You know, even in the classroom, they're working with the knowledge that these female counterparts next to them are the leaders too. They don't have to be told that, okay, you go ahead and lead now. No. So we have a whole, you know, generation of young men that I'm really, really excited about that we won't have these issues with. But the women that are going into those said spaces, Racquel, I couldn't agree with you 100% that we need to be in those spaces. We cannot get rid of those things, even if we try. I've tried for the past 15 years, it hasn't worked. So therefore, you go into those spaces, put your crown on, deal with the fact that your emotion is passion, and stand up whenever you need to stand up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what works for me? There's a like a Wonder Woman stance. And physiologically, if you stand in that stance for like, 5 minutes before a meeting, it changes the chemicals moving through your body and gives you more confidence. The other thing that works without fail for me is listening to Unstoppable by Sia. If you hear me going into something, that is my battle song. And that is crown plus armor plus wings plus everything. That is my battle ready gear. Sia, Unstoppable. And it's just like, I'm unstoppable today. I don't need no batteries. I'm unstoppable. And we need that.
Yeah, one last thing my mentor told me, she was in a meeting with me once with a board, a local board. And I was like this.
Slouch shoulders.
Because I was being like, everything was being thrown at me. She said, when we came out of that meeting, she said to me, next time you put that chest up and do not let it go down. Don't let them see. And she, again, I don't want to say make it men, woman thing, but the entire board was made up of, gender parity there. And she said, do not do that. But keep your shoulders up, keep your head up, and keep, you don't, even if you're feeling it, you cannot let that be seen, and these things help. They really do.
Yeah. And I mean, what we're doing, yes, I appreciate that, pulling your shoulders back helps you feel better. And it also shows that you're not defeated, but not allowing your physical behavior to undermine what's going on with you, because you want to maintain that strength. And yes, we want to create spaces for different demonstrations of strength, but certainly we need to also, in those moments when we are still in the minority, absolutely represent to the fullest. I'm reading a book called Radical Candor, and it talks about people giving advice like that, where, listen, you're in that meeting, pull your shoulders back. You need to be willing to and open. I know for me, I'm not as good at it as I'd like to be in terms of receiving constructive feedback, but I absolutely want to be better because I know that every bit of constructive feedback will help me to be a better version of myself.
Yes, that's a great thing. And I'm there with you, Racquel. That is something I'm learning to accept in a much more, accepting way. Yeah.
But I want to close with, what is the best advice that you've given? And you shared with us some beautiful pieces of advice that you've gotten. I'd love to hear, what is the best advice that you've been given?
The best advice I was given is when I returned to London after failing for my first 3 months. Like I wasn't going anywhere, so I went back to London, and a professor of mine asked me why did I come back, and I said, well, there's nothing happening, I can't. And he said, Camille, you have to look at that as if it's an empty canvas, and you now need to take that empty canvas and put whatever bright color, whatever dark color, you need to paint your story on that empty canvas. I will never, ever forget that.
Neither will I. I loved it. Thank you so much, Camille. I really appreciate the time that you spent with us and the gems that you shared. I'll take that to heart. I love that idea. Nothing's happening for me. Listen, it's your canvas. You paint it. You create your own color.
Absolutely.
And that's what we have to do.
Go ahead. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. It was so much fun, Racquel. Oh my God, it was so much fun talking to you. And anytime you need me again, I'm here.
Fabulous. Good. And I'm so glad you're anticipating that I'm going to call you again. Wonderful. All right. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing this journey with us. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. You can find us anywhere that you get podcasts, whether it's Spotify, Apple, Google, YouTube, anywhere. Please join us on this journey. Tell us who you'd recommend as another guest. Tell us what's the best advice you've gotten. That would be so helpful, because we're sort of building up our armor of the best things to do, and how do we show up as our best selves and create the world that we want to see. Thank you so much. Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.